All right, welcome to the Monday morning edition of Sidelines. Rob Brown here live from Red River Ford Toyota in Wynn, Arkansas. Jimmy Hyams joins us as well. Got a great lineup today. Start off with Dave Schultz, WNSP Sports Radio down in Mobile, talking some South Alabama, Sun Belt, Gulf South, SEC, you name it. Q's Nation. I know he's the Syracuse man, and we'll get with him in the second segment this morning. Jimmy Hyams will check in from the Sports Animal, longtime sports writer for the Knoxville News Sentinel up in Knoxville, talking about Tennessee. Jordan Hill joins us at the top of hour number 2, 24/7 Sports Dog Nation. Really enjoy having Jordan. Met him at SEC Media Days and doing a great job. And then we'll go out deep in the heart of Texas to Austin, orangebloods.com. Anwar Richardson, get an update on Texas. Who is the quarterback? And the one, is it going to be Quinn Ewers driving his Aston Martin? We'll find out, but we'll be with you 8 to 10 a.m. Central, 9 to 11 a.m. east of the Chattahoochee, as we are every Monday through Saturday. And we'll be talking a lot of college football. I know it's tough, but somebody's got to do it. I want to say hello to one of our listeners. Always love hearing from what our listeners are doing. Michael Brennan, MJB Energy Resources, trailering energy efficiency strategies for capital, stock, and tax implications. That's mjbenergyresources.com. Thanks so much for listening. Got a lot of great listeners that are out there. Mike over in Memphis, I've known a long time. Appreciate it. But Dave, let's talk some college football. A lot's going on right now. You're down in Mobile, the port city. It's a hotbed for great high school football, Mobile and Baldwin County down there. Everybody's coming in there. I think you've been there for about 3.5 years, and you've been around. But what's the market like that down there? Obviously, we know Auburn and Alabama are in state, but you got LSU, you got South Alabama, Florida State. There's a lot going on, and let's talk about what's hot topics on your mind.
Well, it's always Alabama. When I'm heading into my 4th year right now down here, and so Alabama's going to dominate because they're as good as they've ever been. And Auburn is on the other side of things as of lately. So it was either Chuck Oliver or Paul Feinbaum saying this is the biggest separation that they've ever seen between Alabama and Auburn. So obviously Alabama is it. Today we may go into it on today's show. Did Alabama swing and miss with Billy Napier? Right, he's cleaning up at Florida recruiting wise in year 1, and Brian Harsin is still struggling in year 2. So that'll be a topic for discussion. As far as South Alabama is, it kind of is an afterthought, which is too bad because they have as good as facilities as anybody in the group of 5. They have not had a consistent winner. Had an exciting football team last year with Jake Bentley and Jalen Tolbert, but Bentley ended up getting hurt. They started out 5-2 and then maybe 5-3, and they lost their last 4. They lost a couple of games they shouldn't have in Kane Wommack's opening season. We got another quarterback battle on our hands this year. You got to replace Tolbert. Defensively, they should be very good. They got a potential All-American at corner, and so we'll see. They move the time of their games for the Iron Bowl, so they know where they stand because, admittedly, a majority of South Alabama fans is going to be rooting for Alabama and Auburn. So I think last year they actually had their last game of the year not only on Black Friday but during the afternoon. Like I could not go to the last game of the year because they just didn't want to compete at all with the Iron Bowl.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you look, and Jimmy and I talk with a lot of people every day, and there's a lot of interest, not just in the SEC, but in South Alabama, Southern Miss, Troy. I want to see football successful on all levels. Now, you're from Syracuse. Is that,
Yeah, I'm from Central New York. Yep.
Yeah. Well, and I've grown up, and Jimmy has too, and Syracuse has been pretty damn good in football. I mean, I remember Dick McPherson's teams and Paul Pasquale had some really good teams. But, you wonder, is there any similarity to what's going on with Syracuse? Do they struggle like South Alabama does to try to compete with Auburn and Alabama? Are they trying to do that same thing with the pro football teams in Buffalo and in New York City?
Well, let's make sure there is a huge difference between, what Syracuse has to go through. They're a private institution.
Exactly.
They are not a public school. Yeah. They're a pretty big private institution. I think they got like 15,000 undergrad, but it's a private school. It's also really expensive to go to. Yeah. And somewhere along the way, college football passed them by, right? Like you said, they were really good. It took Dick McPherson a couple of years to get it going. But, they went undefeated one year. They did. I'm still not over the tie ball game with Auburn in the Sugar Bowl. But, somewhere along the way, he figured out how to win bowl games, right?
Yeah.
He was beating LSU in bowl games. He was he was winning bowl games on a regular basis. Pasqualoni, struggled a little bit, but they were really good. Syracuse, for a while, was one of the only private schools in America that had a top 25 football and basketball team.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And so it just passed them by. They hired Greg Robinson after Pasqualoni, and they've had a couple of good years. Doug Marrone was in there for a little bit. Scott Schaefer was in there a little bit. But Dino has struggled. Dino has had one good year. We're going to find out, and we're finding out how good a quarterback Eric Dungy really was carrying that team, because people have figured out Dino's offense. Kind of like, we'll see, bringing it back to the Sun Belt, how good a quarterback Levi Lewis was for the Raging Cajuns. He never quite got to the high end of what I would have preferred, but they only lost one game last year. They won a bunch of close games last year. And so they lost a lot of coaching talent and some really good football talent to the Florida Gators. So we'll see where that is. But as you know, it kind of all starts and ends with the quarterback. And there are some battles going around the SEC and the Sun Belt and around America.
Yeah. Another question before we go to Jimmy. Do the people at Southern Miss feel like with the rise of the football program, that beautiful new stadium and all for South Alabama, that's really hurt them in recruiting? Because I know it's less than 100 miles on Highway 98 from Hattiesburg to Mobile, and they have in the past really recruited a lot of their best players from Mobile, South Alabama, and really the whole state of Alabama.
That's a good question. I'm not sure how great South Alabama's recruiting has been over the last few years. Yeah. They're a little bit behind right now. I'm not really sure what's happened to Southern Miss. All right. They played, it was only a handful of years ago. They played, it could have been Nick Mullins, right? They played the Cajuns in the New Orleans Bowl, and then the bottom fell out. Like the bottom just fell out of the program. They do have a home state kid. They got a Mississippi coach, Will Hall, very young. I knew him when he was the offensive coordinator for the Raging Cajuns. So they are headed in the right direction, but you do have to invest. If you want a payoff, you do have to invest. South Alabama has invested. They got a new stadium. The Senior Bowl is now in the new stadium. They probably still need a new workout facility. But, other than that, South Alabama, again, has these great facilities. And, we'll see. I'm not sure how that's affected Southern Miss. But whatever happened to Southern Miss, they were pretty good in the late teens, and then at the bottom has fallen out the last few years. I'm right there. Didn't the coach quit a couple years ago after South went in there and beat him? Like after week one? That's ridiculous. So who knows what happened there?
Yeah, it's interesting take on that. But Jimmy, jump in here.
Well, in more recent times, Larry Fedora had a really nice run at Southern Miss, and then ever since, they've struggled. And it really started in my mind back when, UAB started football. And then, they were able to attain success fairly quickly. And then Larry Blakeney going to Troy. He did a fabulous job there. And that was a big hit to Southern Miss's recruiting. They had a field day with all these diamonds in the rough that were available in Mississippi, Alabama, and the Southeast region. But then all of a sudden you got UAB. Watson Brown came in, really kind of started it from scratch, and considering the obstacles he overcame, did a tremendous job there establishing a base. And then again, Larry Blakeney, his run there was phenomenal. And then with South Alabama, and as you mentioned, with the facilities they have today, and I think they're in one of the up-and-coming conferences in college football, the Sun Belt, because so many of these coaching staffs have done a tremendous job in the transfer portal. And it just seems like to me, with the facilities they have, and just all the natural kind of advantages that are available to them, I think they have a great location, great weather. You're close to a lot of great high school football prospects that, their future should be, pretty bright. And again, as we start to figure out this NIL and transfer portal and find out what eventually the regulations and the guidelines are going to be on it. Right now, it seems like would be a perfect time. And for the most part, the Sun Belt schools have done a great job in taking advantage of the fact that really no rules or the restrictions are very limited in the transfer portal.
Yeah, Rob, I'll get on that. A couple of things on that. I am absolutely livid that Syracuse has not gotten in the NIL deal. All of their alumni base is New York City. Where's all the money? New York City. Let's go. Yeah. All right. You were given an opportunity for a year to figure it out, and they're just not into it. They don't want to deal with it. They're not into it. I don't understand. As far as Diamond in the Rough, you're not kidding. Carlton Marshall, who might be in his 12th year of college football. I don't know if you know this, Rob. Bumper Pool, I read this for Bumper Pool for the Arkansas linebacker. Everybody knows who Bumper Pool is. Bumper Pool is second in the nation in tackles since he's gotten into college. The leading tackler in college is 5'9" linebacker Carlton Marshall. Went to school here in McGill-Tulane, under-recruited because he's undersized, but he only leads the nation in tackles. It'd be very cool to see him in the Senior Bowl over here and see him get a chance in the pros. Right? Sam Mills just went into the Hall of Fame, and obviously, you can't teach 6'3", but you also can't teach heart, and that guy's got to have something. And we'll see if he can. We'll see if Carlton Marshall gets a shot in the pros at the next level, despite his size.
Yeah, I mean, Jimmy, that's both of y'all. That's a great. What I love hearing, and Jimmy's a huge proponent of playing those Sun Belt Conference teams, and I am too. I think if you're Auburn and Alabama, for instance, play Troy, play South Alabama, play UAB, keep the money in state. It helps those programs, and you can't do it, not play them because you're afraid. In the past, a lot of the big state schools, well, we have nothing to gain and everything to lose. A scared man never want to fight, Dave Schultz.
Well, South Alabama's going to Auburn here maybe next year.
Yeah.
Also, Auburn came down here to play basketball.
Yeah.
Packed Mitchell Center. They almost lost the game. They were ahead all game, and then South made a run. If it wasn't for an Isaac Okoro offensive rebound and foul, Auburn would have lost that game and give it up to Bruce Pearl because the agreement to come here and play was made by the previous coaching staff. Yeah. They also went up there to Auburn last year, and I think Nate Oates in South Alabama, they played them last year. They played Alabama up in Tuscaloosa. Alabama's coming down here to play basketball this year. So you're right. Nick Saban talks a good game, but never seems to play the in-state schools for whatever reason. They do seem to have a regular matchup with Southern Miss, though. Yeah,
yeah.
Well, let me jump in on that. That goes way above Nick Saban. The University of Alabama Board of Trustees simply isn't going to allow it.
You think he can't overrule the Board of Trustees?
Right.
I don't think so. He hasn't been able to do it up to this point as far as scheduling in-state teams because he has been an open proponent of it. And these guys have been around for a long, long time, and they're going to be around way after Nick Saban's gone. And they just seem to have their position established for many, many decades, and they just don't seem interested in changing it. It's really unfortunate because I believe that these teams should be playing for the reasons that you guys have discussed.
Yeah. Dave, great point by Jimmy.
Right. But wasn't it Bear Bryant's grandson who said UAB football's done?
Yeah.
I was in Louisiana when that was happening, and they were putting the kibosh on UAB as if that was a threat to Alabama football. And that was crazy. It was insane. And they rebuilt it back up to what it was. And obviously it's a competitive, group of five school.
Yeah, it is. And that, I think you can argue forever about these Board of Trustees and the influence they have, whether it's, good or bad. But I will say that I saw last night, something was on Twitter. Auburn hosted Tuskegee, which is 19 minutes away, had their scrimmage at Jordan-Hare Stadium, and all I know is I saw a whole bunch of responses from Tuskegee alumni that were saying my two favorite teams, Tuskegee and Auburn. What a great gesture! I don't know what's going on, but do whatever you can to help your fellow in-state schools. I mean, I think that's a good thing. But look, we all know you've got powerful members of the board of trustees. Auburn's had some over the years, and you know, they do a lot. I mean, they do a lot, but you can't not play a fellow school that's in your state because you're scared of losing to them. I mean, that, you know, you're playing small to make other people around you feel less insecure is a disservice to you and to them. You need to shine bright, and they'll follow your lead. We'll be right back after this break with more with Jimmy Hyams and Dave Schultz from WNSP in Mobile.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Brown. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Brown back here with you. Great discussion. I like Dave Schultz. Again, you're down in Mobile, and again, it's the port city. Mardi Gras began there, as you know. It's a great place. We have Jim Nagy, executive director of the Senior Bowl, on the show a good bit, and love what he does. Before him, you had Phil Savage, but this, I think, 75, almost 80 years, Mobile has had the Senior Bowl there. How big a deal is it, Senior Bowl week, for the local, high schools, the economy, everybody involved, because you get to see it up close and personal?
Yeah, it is a big deal. It's all week long. The players really enjoy it. When you can, they have this big Mardi Gras type parade when the weather cooperates. You get all the NFL guys to come on in. It really is a big deal locally. And it's also become a big deal nationally, right? Just in like the last decade with all the, draftniks and scouting guys who they all get credentials. You'll see a bunch of people that maybe are not, national sportscasters, and they are allowed to come to the Senior Bowl, and they do a great job of breaking down film. I'll give you a great example. We have somebody who comes on the station with us every year. I think he's out of Florida. He was not a big Alex Leatherwood fan. Everybody was telling everybody on how good Alex Leatherwood is, and Alex Leatherwood is struggling right now with the Las Vegas Raiders. He was way ahead of that, talking to us a couple of years ago about that. So it's a great week. We throw a big party. That's for our station. All our sponsors come out, and we kind of do a thank you versus around the holiday time. And it is absolutely huge. We need a little bit of good weather. It was sunny. It was dry last year, but boy, 45 with a stiff breeze in Alabama in February is going to, make it a little bit chilly. So we need that 55 to 60 degree day and make it dry. And hopefully we'll get a big crowd out there at the Hancock Whitney Stadium on South Alabama's campus. And no, that's got to help somewhere around the way. It's got to help South Alabama recruiting.
Yeah, it does. I mean, the whole week. No, I asked this question to Jim Nagy, like, where are the offensive linemen? And I asked this question to every coach, every person. You get to see out there, the practices are open to the media that week. A lot of guys from places like North Dakota State that are out there. Who were some surprises that you saw that were drafted that you said, you know what, this guy could have played in the SEC or the Big Ten?
Well, when they, Trevor Penning with the Saints, right? Small school. Cole Strange with the Patriots. We had him on a couple of times. What is he, from Chattanooga? And he was playing Kentucky. And right then and there, Jim Nagy was like, this guy's coming to our game. We got to make sure this guy comes to game. So that's the one. It is always Kyle Duggar out of like Lenore, out of North Carolina. He's a safety for the Patriots. I happen to be a Patriots fan, and he's really good. So it's really the small school types. It's not the quarterbacks, who are all vying to be picked as highly as possible. It's these smaller school guys that are the most fun. We're looking just to get drafted and just looking for that opportunity. And some of them get to be first-round picks.
Well, Jimmy, along the lines of what Dave is saying, that the draft, go back, remember the Super Bowl with the Chiefs against the Bucks a couple of years ago. There was one 5-star on the field, Leonard Fournette, 22 4-stars, and 23 stars. The other players, 41 of them, were non-rated, just guys that were developed. And I don't think that's a real surprise. I think Dave's right, and you're right to talk a lot about the Sun Belt and Gulf South, and it's just different conference. There's good football played everywhere, isn't there?
Yeah, and nowadays, virtually every NFL organization puts huge financial resources into their scouting departments. I mean, even significantly more than 10 or 15 years ago. And all these teams are aware of players that maybe had high-profile exits from certain schools when they were really ballyhooed recruits, and then they went to a Power 5 program, and maybe they were a little overwhelmed by it, and they weren't used to the competition, going up against guys that were just as good as they are or better. And it was just kind of a shock. And we know every player is wired differently. And a lot of those guys would drop down to the FCS or play at the Division II level, and even at Division III. And again, the financial resources have been put into these scouting organizations to the point that it's hard to hide a player nowadays. If one organization finds out about a program at the D3 level, they think, hey, we're not going to be talking to anybody about this. We're going to keep it to ourselves. But it's hard to pull that off anymore because, again, these scouting rooms are very sophisticated now.
Yeah. Dave, looking now at what's going on, I got to ask you a question. Football, not just in the South, but nationally. Just last question before we let you go. What's going on with the Big Ten? I think the Fox owns, 61% of the Big Ten network. You've got ESPN, possibility of a 2:30 CBS game and all. Did the SEC lose something here that we're not yet aware of with having a grip on the TV market nationally and being the top brand?
Well, you can look at the big picture and the small picture, right? So the small picture would be Big Ten's getting a lot of money, right? They just got UCLA and USC. They may not be done with that. Who knows? So they're going to get a huge paycheck coming up here from probably Fox and CBS. The problem is, as I read on Barrett Sports Media, ESPN, they don't have the rights. They kind of put you to the back burner, right or wrong. And so the NHL learned that the hard way. They just don't talk about them a whole lot, whether it's postseason or whatever the case is, unless they have the rights. I can't imagine, ESPN, disregarding Ohio State, Michigan, Wisconsin, but maybe more of the, Purdue's and the Iowas, maybe not getting as much pub, right? You always have Mike Greenberg over at ESPN. He's never going to shut up about Northwestern, which is fine. But, so the big picture is maybe they get a little less publicity, but they get a little bit more money, or a lot more money as the case may be. So we'll see what happens there. I think the SEC is going to be fine. It is amazing on what, they've done down here. And it also should be mentioned about this whole NIL deal. You really find out, Tuscaloosa is a small college town. Mm-hmm. There's like the school and a hospital, and that's it, right? Even in Baton Rouge, you got the Capitol. So Auburn is a small college town. There's not a lot of industry. There happens to be industry outside of these towns in Birmingham and in Huntsville. But, there's not a whole lot of NIL money to go around. So it's interesting when you find that out about, these are small college towns. when you're dealing with stuff like that. But it'll be interesting to see, again, the big picture, how much publicity they're getting. I can't imagine ESPN totally disregarding the Big Ten, but it will be interesting to see who they end up with. Is it more Pac-12 or Big 12 or what they're going to do, and how much more publicity that's going to get compared to the Big Ten. I can't imagine them disregarding it, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's, a little bit further back.
Yeah, and David, I'm not going to be surprised if Apple doesn't buy a network for all college, because they've got everybody in their hand right now. Jimmy, one more thing.
Yeah, ESPN pulled out of the Big Ten negotiations last week. So it's going to be a Fox deal. And Rupert Murdoch, in my mind, has always been ahead of the game in his feeling that live sports is just a gold mine. And in the Big Ten, I think this all had really started with Jim Delaney, because he realized, I don't think there's ever been a commissioner that ever was able to maximize the strengths of his conference and minimize the weaknesses. And the strengths being, even before the UCLA USC expansion, the Big Ten has approximately 2/3 of the TV sets in the United States within their geographic footprint. And even though that New York market is not a huge college sports market, still, when you get near the end of the season and those heavyweight teams start to emerge and the Ohio States of the world are in championship contention, it's a great market to have. So they've really done a good job there, and they've done a great job of minimizing the fact that the Big Ten's only won 2.5 national championships in the last 50 years in football, and none in basketball since 2000.
Yeah. Dave, I tell you what, we got to get you back on again. Getting a lot of people putting up comments on my phone and everything like that. This guy,
Jimmy is so, I do have to go to South Alabama practice. They moved it up a couple hours. I appreciate you moving, but he's not wrong about that. Think about who is in the Big Ten footprint: Milwaukee, Chicago, Detroit, Indianapolis. We got Birmingham down here, right? Orlando maybe, and I guess Houston. But Houston is a pro market per se compared to Chicago, pro market, but kind of a college feel to it. So he's not kidding when. The Big Ten, I was shocked when I found this out. The Big Ten was making more money before this new contract. I always thought it was the SEC, but they're dealing with much bigger media markets than we are down here in the SEC.
Yeah, I know you got to go. Tell people, Dave Schultz, how they can follow you.
At SchultzyCast, SchultzyCast. Got a show 3 to 6 p.m. Central Time on WNSP 105.5 here in Mobile.
Hey, look, great stuff, man. Have a great time at practice, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Rob.
You bet, man. All right, Dave Schultz, great stuff there in that first segment. Let's go up to Knoxville, up in the Smokies. Talk to longtime sports writer for the Knoxville News Sentinel, does a sports show every day on the Sports Animal, Jimmy Hyams. Jimmy, look, Tennessee, they're starting to get more and more traction. I see where we had Roman Harper on last week. He likes them a lot. My wife is all giddy because he's looking at a 10-2 season for Tennessee. That means they got potential to win 11, maybe 12, who knows? But what are your thoughts right now from the first week and a half or so of practice from the Hill?
Rob, I like what I've seen. I think this team is building some depth in areas where it needs it. I've been really impressed with the limited amount of practice we watch, with how sharp the quarterbacks, the top two quarterbacks, Hooker and Milton, how well they have looked. You hardly ever see a ball hit the ground when they throw to the wide receivers. I've been really impressed with how sharp they are. I can't say that about a year ago at this time. So I like what I've seen there. If they can get Juwan Mitchell back and he can play at the level that he did at linebacker when he led Texas in tackles, the linebacker unit is going to be deeper. The defensive line, they need to get Elijah Simmons back. He's been banged up. But if they can get him back out there, he's got a little bit of a knee problem. That will help the defensive line. My biggest concern about this team overall is the secondary. I'm not enamored with what they got back there. They've got a lot of bodies. If you can't walk-ons, there are like 23 defensive backs on this team. But I have not seen the two transfers that have come in, one from Georgia Tech, one from Ohio State. Hadn't seen them do much yet. Cornerbacks are a little bit iffy, in my opinion. I like the safeties. They're even taking one of the safeties, and they're getting a look at him at the star position. I'm just concerned about the secondary. That is my biggest worry about Tennessee's team this year.
Jimmy, when you look at what happened last year, I mean, when Mississippi State with the hire of Mike Leach, a lot of people did what you call the dollar package, where you're rushing 3 and dropping 8 into coverage. You can't do that. I mean, not long term, but 23 defensive backs is a lot. It really helps when you've got a surge up front from your defensive line, obviously linebackers to plug those gaps and all, but front 7 depth, 2 and 3 deep, that's critical. What's your report card, A, B, C, D, or F on Tennessee's front 7?
I'm going to say right now, probably a B- on the front 7.
Okay.
I think that out of the trio of Byron Young and Roman Harrison and Tyler Barron, they need to get 20 to 25 sacks. They also need to pressure the quarterback. They have got to be disrupted. And Tennessee needs to be able to get a pass rush with rushing only 4. Nick Saban said this the other day, and I couldn't agree with him more. He said, how good your cornerbacks are determine what all you can do in defense. Mm-hmm. Well, I don't like Tennessee's cornerbacks right now, which means if they start blitzing and they leave their cornerbacks on an island, they're in trouble. Okay. And so I like those 3 that I just mentioned. I think Omari Thomas is a really good defensive tackle. I don't know if he's an all-SEC player, but he's good enough to win within the SEC. Dominic Bailey has improved. A couple other guys have improved up there. So I think the defensive line, and if Elijah Simmons get healthy, I think the defensive line will be okay. At linebacker, I mentioned Mitchell earlier. Jeremy Banks had 128 tackles last year. Aaron Beasley had 84 in the regular season. And then you got Solon Page. So if you add Mitchell to that, and they only play 2 linebackers, they play a 4-2-5, I think they'll be fine at linebacker. So I would give them a B- with their front 7.
All right. Jimmy, questions for Jimmy Hyams.
Yeah, Jimmy, I raised my eyebrows a little bit when you talked about in your opening statements what you've seen from a few of the players. And the reason I did is that I'm wondering if you guys are getting more access to practice than you have in the past, because it seems like forever in the SEC, you weren't allowed to watch much of anything. And then at Alabama, I don't know if they can still watch pre-practice stretching anymore. So what kind of access are you guys getting in practice? And then also, since the Vols play earlier than some other teams, they open on a Thursday night against Ball State. I was curious if they've had their first scrimmage yet. And if they have, what have you learned from that so far?
As far as the availability, we get to see 2 periods. And so what happens is they do some stretching and they go through a few things inside. They go outside and we get like 2 5-minute periods. So we're only seeing about 10 minutes outside. We're seeing maybe 5 minutes inside. The very first practice we had 8 periods, which was about 45 minutes. So that's the limit that we have. Now, they've had 2 scrimmages. The second scrimmage was on Sunday. And so Josh Heupel talked about that scrimmage, and basically what we're getting is information from what coaches tell us, or from, I might visit with somebody that's been to a scrimmage. And like the first scrimmage, Jeremy Banks had an interception, Hendon Hooker threw it. Dylan Sampson scored on a touchdown. Cedric Tillman had a touchdown. So I know that from the first scrimmage. I don't know as much about the second scrimmage yet. We'll try to get some more information about that. But so we're still very limited in what we're able to see at practice so far. But in the 15 or so minutes that we get, you can pick up a few things about who's injured. But I typically go and watch the passing drills because I want to see what those guys are doing, and that's where most interest is. And I'm telling you, Hooker and Milton have been on target. They have been really impressive.
All right, let's do this. We're going to take a quick break, be back with more, Jimmy. And this is great dialogue on what's going on up at Tennessee. And again, getting past stretching is tough. I think a lot of coaches, as a player, told me they see ghosts out there. We'll be right back to talk about those ghosts.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-City exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Brown. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Jimmy Hyams, again, more on Tennessee. I like that. That's a hell of a stark contrast from last year to this year. The dropped passes compared to, you didn't see any balls hit the ground the other day. Joe Milton started out at quarterback last year. Look, in that first game Tennessee played last year against Bowling Green in game one, Tennessee just looked incredible. The first, I think they got up 14-0. Joe Milton did not end up as the quarterback. Is there a legitimate battle? Is Milton improving? I think Hendon Hooker is clearly the man, but healthy competition, legitimately, real competition in the quarterback room, to me, is a great thing.
Well, that can go both ways. So is Milton improving? Yes. Is there competition? No, it's Hendon Hooker's job.
Yeah.
And the reason I say it can go both ways, when Peyton Manning was here after his freshman year, he had no competition. Although there was a coach on the staff that corrected me when I told him that. I said, yeah, he's got no competition. He said, yeah, he does. He does have competition. I said, what is it? He's competing to be the greatest quarterback ever played the game.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That was his competition. Now, I'm not going to say that it's Hooker's competition, but no, it's Hooker's job. It's clearly his job. Milton has looked good. He's making better decisions in the scrimmages, according to coaches. We don't get to see him. But Rob, to me, he's still got to do that in a game. That's one thing in scrimmages. You know the people you're playing against, so forth. But until he gets in a game and proves it, then I guess I'm going to have a little bit of doubt. But we interviewed him for about 20 minutes in the preseason when they did media day. He was great. He touched on a lot of different topics. Very engaging young man. He's an incredible athlete, and you wish nothing but the best for him. But this is Hooker's job, and Hooker knows it. And I'd expect Hooker to have a big year.
Well, when you look at the SEC, 12 of the 14 schools have starting quarterbacks returning. And a lot of them are, obviously LSU did a trade. Their guy, Max Johnson's at Texas A&M. Jaden Daniels from Arizona State, he's come over there to LSU. A&M, Haynes King is back. Everybody thinks it's going to be Max Johnson. But I think Tennessee, from an efficiency standpoint, has one of the best quarterbacks around. I mean, and last year, the stats on that Tennessee win on the road at Kentucky, I keep going back to it, 14-47, just amazing. They're quick, but I mean, when you score that fast, it does put a lot of pressure on your defense. And so you're talking about concerns in the secondary. That's even more of a reason to focus on how good is Tennessee's defensive line going to be. When you've got Rodney Garner coaching your defensive line, that's a good thing. He finds ways to get guys on the field, and he loves to rotate. He plays a lot of guys. He likes to play, 2 or 3 at every position in every game, and that's nothing but a good thing. Jimmy Hyams.
Yeah, well, Jimmy, in regard to the comments you made about Tennessee's defense, it appears they're not quite where I think a lot of insiders in Knoxville would like for them to be. And in that regard, I usually don't talk about this at this time of the year, but it keeps appearing in the press quite prominently, and that is, how is Tennessee doing on the recruiting trail? Because just in the last week and a half, there have been a lot of high-profile commitments announced. And one school that's gotten my attention that was being criticized for quite a while for not making any progress is Florida. They seem to have really come on in the last couple of weeks. And how are the Vols doing in that regard? Because it sounds like they're certainly looking for some future help on the defensive side of the ball.
They are. They just got a commitment from a kid from Alabama. His name is Ricky Gibson. He's out of Trustville, Alabama. And he's not rated very high, but all I need to know is that Tennessee beat out Georgia. If Georgia offered you and Penn State and Arkansas offered you, I don't need to know what his ranking is. That to me is probably going to be a pretty good prospect. So that they now have 20 commitments. And depending on which recruiting service you look at, they're right at number 10 in the country. One of them that I saw had them 11. Somebody else had them 9. So they're doing a really good job. They know they got to get more defensive players, and they have focused on that. And I think they've done a really good job in that regard. So I've been impressed with what they've done on the recruiting trail. I think they've done a heck of a job, and they needed to. You know, they need to go out and get some good defensive players, and they need to have a really good class. One of the question marks about Heupel when he got here was his ability to recruit. Well, it's one thing to recruit to Central Florida. It's another to recruit to Tennessee, right? So I wasn't as concerned about the recruiting. It was I'm not going to ding him for not having a top 10 recruiting class at Central Florida. Yeah. Let's see what he could do at Tennessee. And so far, I think this staff's done a good job.
Well, that I agree with you totally. You look at, and then you have Danny White as your AD, and they had familiarity working together at Central Florida. And Tennessee, really, you go back in the late 70s when Johnny Majors came back from Pitt, they began to recruit nationally. They would get players from all over, and no other school in the SEC at that time was recruiting nationally on that level. Now, well, everybody is. And you look at the California kids that are playing on SEC rosters. But I think when you look at Tennessee too, the offensive line, you know, you made a lot of great comments going into last season with Tennessee. Offensive line is a critical position. Both lines of scrimmage, offensive and defensive lines. Let's break down Tennessee on the offensive line, because you've got a quarterback, Hendon Hooker. He's highly efficient, doesn't throw a lot of interceptions, which means he's not going to get you beat. But the offensive line, you know, you've got to be deep there as well, and you got to be able to run the ball. And Tennessee proved it a number of times last year. That road win at Missouri sticks out. 457 yards rushing on the road. Heupel had been in the SEC those 2 years at Missouri when he took an offense that was 13th in the league and put him at 1-2 in the next 2 years. Those are impressive numbers. And it looks like he's building that same model at Tennessee, but he's getting better players. 9 or 10 in the country right now in recruiting with 20 players. Tennessee brand is powerful. They don't lack for facilities, Jimmy. I mean, if they do, talk about it, but they're getting back that rhythm that they used to have in recruiting.
They are. So did you want me to analyze the offensive line?
Yeah. Just go on the offensive line. Didn't mean to be long-winded.
Okay. I thought you were checking off at the line of scrimmage on me.
Yeah.
They got 4 starters back on the offensive line. They took Darnell Wright and moved him from left tackle to right tackle. Cade Mays is the only departure. They feel like Darnell Wright is a better right tackle. He's more natural there. And in my opinion, and one coach backed this up, I don't think left tackles is important in Tennessee's offense as it would be like in the NFL or with a pro style. Why? Because you're calling plays so fast, the defense is still trying to get lined up. You're getting rid of the football as quickly as you can. So I don't think left tackle is as important as it is in a lot of other systems. Now, having said that, the left tackles right now are a couple of transfers. There's a junior college transfer, J.J. Crawford, the Florida transfer, Gerald Mincy. Those are the 2 right now fighting it out at left tackle. And Josh Heupel said on Sunday at his press conference, both of them are making progress and looking pretty good, to the point where they feel like they can leave Darnell Wright at right tackle. Both guards are back, Jerome Carver and Javonte Spraggins, and the center is back, Cooper Mays. Mays is a little bit undersized. It's hard to say you're undersized when you weigh 296 pounds, but he's a little bit undersized at center. But I think it's a solid line. Now, the one thing this line has to be better at, and it showed up last year, they got to be better in 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2, 4th and 1. Yeah. They didn't get the push they needed to in short yardage situations. And when we talked to Glenn Ellerby, the offensive line coach, he said there's one word that will describe what we have to do to convert on 3rd and 1, and that is to be more physical. They've got to be physical. Yeah. And they feel like a year in that weight room, they should be better in that regard. So I think you're going to look. Last year, Tennessee averaged about 217 rushing yards a game. I think they'll even increase that. I think they'll be an even better running team this year because they're the 2nd year in the system with an offensive line that returns 80% of its starters.
Yeah, well, there you go. And when you think about a hurry up, no huddle, fast paced offense, you can make the mistake as a head coach if you give a directive to your strength and conditioning coaches to make the guys leaner and lighter. You will get destroyed in the SEC. Look at Auburn. Jimmy Hodge.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's amazing to me that when you enter a season with offensive line questions, which Tennessee has done a few times in recent years, and especially when they've gone with younger players, it's really surprising to me that how a number of those units had seemed to develop. And by the end of the year, they really felt comfortable. And there are always pluses and minuses, especially in SEC, when you're going with an offensive line that not only is young, but then you have them mixed in with a couple of veterans, and trying to get those guys to play cohesively is always a challenge. And it seems like this is another case where Tennessee was able to accomplish that for the most part last season, and to the point that you feel pretty comfortable with them going into the 2022 season. And we know how critical it is because Tennessee's going to be relying on scoring as many points as they can every week to win games, just because of the concerns on defense.
Yeah, and with that offensive line, I like what they return. Jim, one of the things they've got to do is build some depth there. There's Dane Davis, who was working at left tackle. Now he's working some at right tackle and right guard. I think he's going to be a flexible guy that can move across the line of scrimmage. But they need Jackson Lampley. They need Addison Nichols, the true freshman. They need some more guys to come through because they are not going to stay healthy. You just don't go through a season with the same 5 offensive linemen, right? That is so rare.
Yes. So
they've got to build a little bit of depth there. They'd like to be have a rotation of 8. Whether they can get there, I don't know. But they were pretty cohesive last year. I think they'll be even more cohesive. But here was the one thing that you kept hearing from these offensive linemen, and that is they would have the opposing defenses worn out by the end of the first quarter. Mm-hmm. It was amazing what they were able to do in that regard. So, and I think this offensive line is going to be in better shape. And they didn't all lose down to 275 pounds. That's not what they did. They're still carrying, like Spraggins is carrying 325, but he's in better shape. And you've got to be in really good shape at every position to run this offense.
Well, you start thinking about the offenses now, and you can win with offense. You don't have to have a lockdown defense. You can win a bunch of games that way. And we've seen national champions, LSU, most recently in 2019, gave up more points than any LSU team I can remember. But they had an offense, a quarterback, Joe Burrow, threw 60-plus touchdown passes, 40 or 5,700 yards passing. Those numbers were like just surreal. And last year, Bryce Young, almost 4,800 yards passing and only 5-6 interceptions. Just incredible numbers. The SEC, Jimmy Hyams, I tell you one thing I do think is happening. I think you're going to see fans allowed to more and more practices and scrimmages. You're starting to hear, and they're hearing from the fans that, that they're being pushed away. And the universities, if they're smart, and athletic directors are going to let them come back. And I think in the SEC, all this stuff that we're hearing about right now, transfer portal, NIL, it's not driving fans away. And my point with this is, look at Tennessee. 65, almost 70,000 season tickets have been sold for this year, and they're not done yet.
Well, that number actually is it's closer to 58,000 on season tickets. I think they'll get to 60 before it's all said and done, unless you've seen a new number out there.
Well, is that including students?
No, it does not include students.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, I was.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay, and there are 12,200 seats allotted to students. About 300 of those are taken up by the band. So, but yeah. So to your point, well, I'll say this though, I'll be very surprised if they open up practices. Coaches are paranoid.
Yeah, I know.
And I remember years ago, I was talking to Philip Former about this. And when I first started covering Tennessee, there were 3 people that would go to practice. Me, a guy with a competing newspaper, usually like maybe a TV station that was doing a feature, or maybe somebody at a radio station.
Yeah.
Next thing you knew, there were 35 people out there because everybody that had a website was out there. And Fulmer told me, he said, look, I can't trust all these guys. I trust you. You've been around. I trust the few. I don't know these 35, so I'm not going to have open practice so they can report on injuries or personnel or movement or this or that. So that's why he's closed it. And that's why I think a lot of them have closed it is because you got so many people that want to go to practice. Now, having said that, Brian Kelly at LSU opened the first 2 scrimmages to the media and the public at LSU.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, gosh, I hope he wins a lot of games so that'll dispel this BS about shutting practices down. But I just, and I don't know that Saban was the godfather of this, but I know that he was on the front end of all this. And I wish they would open it because I don't think you're giving away any secrets. Heck, there are things at Tennessee in the passing game they won't let us film because they think there might be some secret that a team will pick up.
Yeah.
This has been going on for a long time in the SEC, though, Jimmy. But what really
Jimmy, we're about out of time.
Okay, I'll be real quick. Nancy Porter at Rebel Yell last week told us that he was able to see Ole Miss's practice. I guess Lane Kiffin just brought that with him from USC. Of course, he would never do that at Tennessee. But again, though, it seems to be catching hold there. So hopefully in the near future, we'll see more teams opening up their practices because I just don't see any reason for the most part why they shouldn't.
Yeah. And Jimmy Hyams, I mean, I think a lot of coaches are seeing ghosts and they don't need to be scared of ghosts.
You're right. And look, Rob, I agree with you. I wish they would open it. And I think that would be a way to get more interest involved with the program.
Yeah.
I will say this about Kiffin. When he was at Tennessee, he opened one practice in the spring and one in the fall. That was it to the public. Otherwise, it was shut down.
Yeah. Jimmy Hyams, listen, we got to go to a break and you've got to go. We got the next segment, but let people know how they can follow you. And by the way, great stuff. As always, you are just such a pro and we appreciate it. And we do trust you. So let them know how they can follow you.
I appreciate that. Okay. You can go to my Twitter account, which is at Jimmy Hyams. Also, I just posted a blog about Tennessee scrimmage and some observations I had about it in the press conference with Heupel. You can find that at 991thesportsanimal.com. You can find us on iHeartRadio. And if you're in the area, try to find us on the dial at 9. If you can find 99 on your dial, you'll find us. 99.1 FM, 990 AM.
Always, man, love having you on. Look forward to our next visit. Let's take a quick break. We'll be back with Jordan Hill, 24/7 Sports. Head down to Athens, GA, to the Classic City, and talk about the defending national champions after this break.
Kitchens and bathrooms make a home, and the design teams at Kitchens Unlimited know how to make kitchens and baths. They know it all because they have seen it all. Kitchens Unlimited has been designing and remodeling the Mid-South's kitchens and baths for over 50 years. Check out their showroom at 3550 Summer Avenue or visit them on the web at kitchensunlimited.net.
If you have a crash, dent or ding, go to G.E. Patterson and BBG for Tom Martin's Body Shop.
Come on down to Hewlett & Dunn Boot and Clothing Company, located on Historical Square in Collierville, Tennessee. Hewlett & Dunn is the second largest Filson dealer in the Southeast, stocked with Southern brands you know and trust. And a new inventory arriving all the time. Do yourself or someone you know and love a favor and visit this store. Open Monday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
As an agricultural producer, no matter where you farm, minimum tillage is a primary concern each and every season. At House Industries in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, we manufacture equipment to help you maximize efficiency when planting and watering a crop. Pieces like the pulverizer, bedder roller, 3-bar do-all, and bed conditioner assist you in optimizing seedbed preparation and ultimately your bottom line. Visit HouseIndustriesInc.com to locate the dealer nearest you.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Brown. Talk sporty to me.
All right. Great stuff there with Jimmy Hyams, man. Jimmy, I mean, you remember, hell, you played college football, but I remember going to practice at Auburn and other places. And by the way, if word got out, you were talking in today's world about anything you saw, you'd be blacklisted. You're not going to be able to go to practice. So I do think opening up access is a good thing, because I talked with our good friend GatorBaitMedia.com, Buddy Martin, a couple of days ago, and he's talking about, what's going on, the loyalty pledge. And who owns college football? Hell, the fans do. Don't ever forget that. We are the free market. But I do think coaches, they see ghosts, and they got to stop being afraid. You can watch people practice. That doesn't matter. I mean, it's just when they call those plays, that's what matters, which means as a coach, you've got all those secrets in your hand. And you better trust the people around you. But again, open up college football. The fans own college football. We, the people of the United States of America, in order to form a more perfect union, look at the preamble to the Constitution. That's who is college football. Don't forget about the fans. Look at that guy that's got 3 or 4 kids, him and his wife, man and woman, got 3 or 4 kids. A man and woman drive to the game. If they've got a 2-night minimum hotel, they're looking at $1,000 right there. And they got to eat. Kids are going to want snacks and stuff. Parents are too at the games. You're buying beer, you're buying food, you're going to the restaurants. Fans are what make college football important. You ask any of these coaches or these fans why they really hate another school or want to beat them so bad. If they're truly honest with you, Jimmy, it's because they respect them. And that's what it is. I hear a lot of fans say they hate this, they hate that. That's not a virtue that I ever learned at Mass. I mean, yeah, I want to beat you. I want to beat you every time we play you. I'd want to beat my own sister or my parents. And I played handball for years with my dad. He wore a jockstrap on his head as a headband. But we had a lot of 21-19 games that I won or he won, and nobody was giving anybody anything. But don't ignore the fans. And I think you're starting to see more and more people going in. Jordan Hill is with us right now, 24/7 Sports, covering the Georgia Bulldogs over in the Classic City, one of the coolest college towns around. Jordan, I love it. What did you say? Southerners tell better stories on your Twitter site. I love that. But, man, I love having you on this show. Damn, you bring a lot of energy. You know what's going on over there in Georgia. And you get to watch all the practices from start to finish, don't you? I'm kidding. But I'm waiting for those days to come back. How you doing?
Doing good. We last week was sort of the first full week for Georgia's fall camp. They had the first scrimmage Saturday. We got to watch him stretch, Rob. So that was really, but got to talk to Kirby afterwards. So got a little bit of insight. And, hey, it's like, 19 days away, I think, from the start of their season. So it's right around the corner.
Look, man, if you're keeping track, that's 456 hours, but I'm not. But no, I am. But 456 hours away from the start of Georgia's first game. The thing that I like about Kirby Smart, he's probably got it hanging over above his desk in his office. The only easy day was yesterday. He learned that from Nick Saban, won 4 national championships while he was at Alabama. But I do get that sense, the way they recruit, the way he runs practices, the way he does everything. What are concerns? What are the takeaways from the first practices so far on the defense? I'm not talking about offense because you got Stetson Bennett back. I do think he's going to be asked to win more games this year, but your defense had 5 guys taken in the first round. But they wouldn't be that good if they didn't have people behind them pushing them, would they?
Not at all. And I mean, the biggest thing taken away from what we've heard, what Kirby told us after Saturday's scrimmage, is the defense still has a ways to go, which I think is fair. I think if you're a Georgia fan, you shouldn't hear that and panic. Again, they lost 5 guys who were picked in the first round, 8 guys overall from that defense that was drafted.
Yeah.
You know, I think just taken from what Kirby told us, I think the biggest concern right now is the defensive line. He talked about that he didn't feel like they were getting enough pressure. There were some big plays on Saturday. Kenny McIntosh, who I actually wrote about this morning, going to be the lead running back, had a big run in that game, in that scrimmage on Saturday. I think they're just looking for guys, particularly on the defensive line, to step up. He's still looking just generally on this defense for guys to be leaders. You know, he wanted more energy. He felt like there were times that they need guys who would call each other out, which is what guys like Nakobe Dean and Jordan Davis, guys like that, they became known for. They were relied on. There's a play that's very famous in that national championship where Nakobe gets in Channing Tindall's face after a sort of a miscommunication. Next play, Channing makes a play and winds up forcing an Alabama field goal. So I think where they're at right now is fair, given we're 9 practices in. But there's still, you know, room for this defense to improve. They've got to generate more pressure up front. And then just generally they need more guys to lead. They've got probably Nolan Smith as the guy that they're counting on as a leader. I think from everything we've heard, he's done a good job. Keely Ringo, another guy. But they just need guys to feel more comfortable, be willing to call each other out because, you know, even though they lost a lot of talent off that defense, they're still expecting big things.
Yeah. Now you look over there at offense. This is going to be a different kind of year. Hey, Stetson Bennett the 4th. You've got to go out here. You got to win this game for us. They don't really say that, but it will be obvious. The defense was so good last year. If Georgia scored a couple of touchdowns, almost that was enough. It wasn't enough in the SEC championship game. Certainly in the national championship game, they came home with the W. But the offense, Jermaine Burton's gone to Alabama to catch passes. But again, if you look at Georgia's recruiting, it's top 1, 2, or 3 every year the last 5 years under Kirby. Who are some guys that surprise you so far, what you're hearing about in practice? Again, number one, who's going to step up for Jermaine Burton?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing right now are some of those receivers and even starting with a tight end, Darnell Washington. He's kind of been, again, this is a 5-star that's like 6'7", and he's kind of the forgotten guy because he's behind Brock Bowers and Eric Gilbert as well. But he played really well in that scrimmage. I really think we're going to see those 3 tight ends played a lot, you know, probably mixed in a good bit. And Kirk even talked about the start of fall camp. I had asked him about Kyrus Jackson, one of the veteran receivers, and he was like, look, these receivers are basically competing against these tight ends too, because obviously we could get more tight ends on the field and take another receiver off. So I don't think they're hesitant at all to work these tight ends and give guys like Darnell significant playing time. A guy we've heard a good bit about as far as the freshman is Dylan Bell, a receiver from Texas that really didn't get talked about a ton. I think he was only a 3-star, but they signed him in February, and he's played really well so far. He got some praise from what he did on Saturday. And it was sort of funny when someone asked Kirby basically what he needs to do to work in the rotation. And he's like, he's there by necessity. I mean, going back to the spring, Kirby has talked a whole lot about just not having depth at wide receiver. And now they're dealing with Arian Smith, hurt his ankle. He's going to have surgery. Everything we've been told, I don't think he's going to miss the year, but he's going to definitely miss the start of the season, probably a few games. But that's another option you no longer have, at least to start the year. They need guys to step up again when you lose a guy like Jermaine Burton. There's a lot of holes to fill among the receivers. We've heard good things about some of these younger guys, and they're expecting other guys like Adonai Mitchell to step up and take a step forward. But Dylan Bell seems like the guy that, as far as being a freshman, going through this for the first time, he's really taking advantage of the opportunity, and he's got a chance to work his way in and maybe play a good bit once we get into the season.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, Jimmy Hodge, what Jordan just referenced, the receivers are having to compete with the tight ends. I think you're going to start seeing that at more schools because when you got tight ends like Georgia has, that they make you they overshadow what you have at wide receiver. You don't see that, but again, I think that's a trend going forward, Jimmy.
Well, it'd be a trend going forward if tight ends grew on trees of that caliber, and they don't.
No.
You know, Georgia is one of the few programs that can boast that kind of caliber of a player at that position.
Yeah.
And that was the big reason Jermaine Burton, went to Alabama. I mean, he caught 53 passes in 2 seasons with the Dogs, which was third among his own team at the wide receiver position, 4th overall. And it's just a reality that in Georgia's scheme, first of all, they like to establish the power running game, and their passing game is spread around and really more to tight ends than anywhere else. I mean, Brock Bowers caught 56 passes last year, almost as twice as many as the number 2 receiver.
Yeah.
In their receiver core. So that's just the way it is. And so from a recruiting standpoint, I would not be surprised to see rival schools point that out. But again, Georgia has established themselves, as one of those programs that they're going to get quality players at every position. But I think that might be something to look at going forward, though, as to whether or not they're going to include the wide receivers more in the passing game. I really like McConkey. He really showed a lot as a true freshman. And again, with those 3 wide receivers, I wanted to ask, how is Gilbert coming along? Because he hasn't played a lot of football the last 3 years. And is he kind of in the number 2 spot, or is Georgia going to do a lot of 2 tight end sets to include him, Washington, and Bowers, or where are they standing as far as that goes?
Yeah, I think we're still going to I think we're really going to learn a lot once we get into that Oregon game, just how exactly they want to use this personnel. We talked to Todd Monken, the offensive coordinator, earlier this week, and he was asked, are you wanting to run a lot of multi-tight end sets? And he's like, you kind of have to balance it. You put those tight ends out there all the time. He said every one of your receivers going in the transfer portal. So you got to be smart, obviously. And also just from the mismatch perspective. I mean, you want to take advantage of those guys when you can. Speaking of Eric Gilbert, I think he's kind of learning and kind of going through this fall camp. I think he's still – his conditioning was a big storyline in the spring, and they commended him for the work he's done. But I think that's continued. And you got to think about right now during fall camp, it's probably 90, 95 degrees here in Athens. We've heard Kirby on the horn a few times telling Eric to pick it up. But, I mean, that's no different. That I could name off 5, 10 players that we hear, being called out. So he's still working his way. I don't think anything is necessarily guaranteed, but I think he's in a good spot to still contribute. And I really think as far as where these tight ends are, they've got a very deep room besides these top 3. But I think these 3 tight ends are the guys you're really going to see a lot of and see worked into the passing game quite well and focused on to try to take advantage again of those mismatches we see.
Looking at the offensive line, I asked this question with everybody. It's so hard to find them. You got Broderick Jones. You got some big guys up there. Sam Pittman recruited a lot of guys. Of course, he's been gone a while, but he left his mark. They call it the big red wall at Georgia. Matt Luke is out. So you've had a change with your offensive line coach. Let's talk about progress or lack of in that area.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big question right now is Tate Ratledge, who is somebody that had a Liz Frank injury on like the 4th play of the Clemson game. He was looked at going into fall camp as the guy at right guard. He has been banged up. He did not play in that scrimmage on Saturday. He's dealing with turf toe, which I think is one of those injuries that you hear it, and people kind of don't think. I mean, that is a very tough injury, especially with an offensive lineman who is going to be getting stepped on just about every other play. So he didn't play in that scrimmage. Jared Wilson, I think he's a redshirt freshman at this point, played in his place. To me, that's the biggest question right now. We've seen other competition at left guard. Xavier Truss, I believe, was left guard in the scrimmage. But Devin Willock, a guy who played right guard during the G-Day game, he kind of moved over, and Xavier played there for the first scrimmage of fall camp. So right now, to me, the focus as far as offensive line is what kind of availability Tate Ratledge has. Again, going back to when we talked to Todd Monken, he talked about the mental reps Tate had taken coming off that foot injury, a very difficult foot injury to recover from. But he said, eventually you got to go out there and play. He compared it, to a world-renowned rifleman. He's like, you can't watch somebody shoot the gun. You got to shoot the gun.
Yeah.
That's basically what it comes down to with Tate. I think he's a very good option. He won that job at a fall camp last year, but obviously right now it's a huge question with what his availability is going to look like. And clearly Georgia's not in a position where they can wait on him. They have to lean on other guys if he's going to be out.
All right, another question. What if Stetson Bennett IV comes out game one, gets injured? Let's talk about that quarterback room, the depth. We know there's Carson Beck, there's some 4 and some 5-star players, and a lot of the fans think they should be playing. Of course, the backup quarterback's always the most popular guy on the team, but you got to have a plan.
Absolutely. And I think based on everything we've seen, and even going back to the spring, I think that would be Carson Beck. I think from everything we've seen, whenever Stetson is done in Athens, I would think Carson Beck has the lead on winning that job. That would still be a competition when you're talking about 2023. But everything we've seen from camp, it seems like Carson is going to be the QB2. Before Arian Smith got hurt, I think that would have been in Tuesday's practice. Carson had a really nice shot on a deep ball to Arian during one of the viewing periods we had. I think Carson, is a guy that's going to be ready to be called on. I think that obviously you want your starter in Stetson to be able to stay healthy, be a guy that can count on, because that's something Georgia hasn't had the last 2 seasons. They've dealt with injuries between him and JT Daniels. But I think they feel pretty good about Carson. I think, even going back to when we talked to Kirby after the scrimmage on Saturday, he talked very highly of how Carson has been playing, how Brock Vandagriff, and then a guy that we hear a lot about who I still think has a ways to go is true freshman Gunnar Stockton. Yeah. I think they feel pretty good about where the quarterbacks are right now. And again, if something were to happen to Stetson, I think it would be Carson being called up.
Yeah, last year I think he got in Kirby's doghouse, no pun intended, but that word got out. I think maybe he told his coach whatever he was going to play in the game. But the thing about Stetson Bennett that I like is he doesn't get rattled, and I think his teammates will follow him to hell and back. He's that kind of a leader, but it is a great story. Again, Georgia wins national championships with small town kids from South Georgia, Buck Bellew, Valdosta, not really a small town, but was back then compared to what it is today. And then Blackshear, not real big, but I think that what stands out about Stetson is he left and he came back. And then even when he came back this time last year, and Jimmy's referenced this a couple of times, he was being told, maybe you ought to think about doing something else. And I think he was 3rd or 4th on the depth chart. And he just worked his way, kept on fighting and, grinding and scratching and clawing. That's the kind of guy that you want leading the quarterback room, not some guy that was born on third base and thought he hit a triple. If you don't have legitimate quarterback competition, I think you've got a real problem. And I've seen schools around the SEC claim they do, and they don't. You got to stay out of politics and stay in production. We're going to be back with more after this quick break. Jordan Hill, 24/7 Sports on the Dogs.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Brown. Talk sporty to me.
All right, more with Jordan Hill, 24/7 Sports on Georgia. And I like another thing that I like about Georgia is you just said it. You've got some big time competition in the quarterback room. Georgia running backs fall out of trees in Athens. I mean, Zeus is gone. Let's talk about who's really stepped it up to be his, I guess, heir apparent. There's somebody, one or two, but you know, in the SEC, Jordan and Jimmy, you better have 4 or 5 because this is a, Ben Troop calls the NFL a collision league. I think the SEC is a collision league as well.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, right now, the guy that has sort of stolen the show at running back has been Kenny McIntosh, a senior who, credit to him, something Del McGee, the running backs coach, pointed out earlier this week. He bided his time, didn't look at the transfer portal, didn't try to go pro early. And he's really risen to the occasion, had a big touchdown in that scrimmage on Saturday. And we've heard nothing but good things about him. The thing that makes him different, not only as a very good ball carrier, but excellent hands. He did not drop a single target last season, which led Power 5. A very good advantage for Georgia. I think they're going to make the most out of him and maximize him in the passing game as well. And the thing with him, too, with the rest of the running back room, they've got other options. Kendall Milton's banged up right now. Kirby said it was a grade 1 hamstring he's dealing with. But they got Dejon Edwards, another junior, who's kind of the guy that's not talked about. And oh, by the way, he was a 4-star. So that's sort of the situation Georgia's at, where guys we're not really focused on or talking that much about. They were still incredible prospects coming into Georgia. I think he's got a good opportunity. Kirby lauded him. And then they got 2 freshmen. Andrew Paul has sort of gotten the most buzz between the two. He was a 3-star they added late, beat Clemson to sign him. He looks the part. I don't know how much they're going to rely on him early on, but I think he's a guy that's got a very bright future. And then Branson Robinson, a 4-star. I think he's still kind of learning his way and figuring out what it's going to take. But I think they've got a very deep running back room, and I think they're going to work those guys on the field just like they did last year. They used Kenny McIntosh and Kendall Milton a good bit, even behind Zamir White and James Cook.
Yeah. Well, you had some studs like in Cook and White last year. Again, the story of Georgia football is next man up. And that's Jimmy Hyams. You're the next man up with a question for Jordan Hill, 24/7 Sports on Georgia.
Well, I think one thing that certainly bodes well for the Dogs with these inexperienced players is that in my mind, for a defending national champion, not to mention a team that plays in the SEC, this is one of the more favorable schedules I've seen for a heavyweight program. And it just seems like that this is a great year in which Georgia can really ease a lot of these guys into the lineup as the season goes along, because I think they'll be a double-digit favorite in every regular season game they play. And with that in mind is the focus by the players and also emphasized by the coaching staff to try to limit outside noise about the fact that everybody thinks they're going to cruise through the regular season, and just focus on each opponent on a week-by-week basis as far as making sure you know their schemes during the week of practice, and then really focus more on improving yourselves as a team.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing that honestly a lot of these guys who are coming back from last year's team, I mean, I think they've learned what it takes to go week to week. I think they've learned from the guys, even the guys that didn't play as big a roles. I think they saw how those guys, how a Nakobe Dean, how a Jordan Davis, how a Darion Kendrick, who was coming over from Clemson and obviously had a lot of success there. I think they've got good examples as far as kind of staying the course. And, I think they've got a guy leading the way in Kirby Smart who knows very well what it takes to keep guys focused. I mean, even going back to his time in Alabama, those years, even when they won national championships, there were a few slip-ups along the way. And I think it's a situation where the fact that Georgia is coming off a national championship, I think it provides those guys a lot of insight. I think it provides those guys what they need to understand how to block out, what you're hearing, when you're going around on the radio or even in class. I was a student at Georgia. I know what it's like. Everybody's excited wanting to talk to those guys about what they think they can do. So I think it's a situation for those guys, for this team, that last year provides a lot of good insight on how to go to the week to week and how to keep the focus on what's coming up. Because again, to your point, Jimmy, I think the schedule is in a very good situation for Georgia. But, it takes one bad afternoon to throw a very big wrench into what could be a very good season for the Bulldogs.
Yeah, and along that, you're right about the schedule. I don't think they've started preparation yet for Oregon, but what are some things that concern you that Oregon does well that Georgia maybe struggles with?
I think the biggest thing that really stands out to me is just what Oregon's defense is going to look like with Dan Lanning. I mean, Oregon's got talent. Noah Sewell, I think, has a chance to be the Buckus Award winner when the season's said and done. He may not wind up winning it, but he's going to have a very good season. And then you pair that with what Dan Lanning did at Georgia and the amount of success they had on defense. I just kind of am intrigued by the fact this is Oregon's first game with Lanning, just what that defense looks like. They've got talent, and I think that he's going to know ways, having faced Stetson in practice for at least, the better part of the fall once Stetson kind of stepped up as the first quarterback. He's going to know some things to do. I still think Georgia's going to win that game. But to me, that's the thing that intrigues me the most. I don't quite see Bo Nix really putting up enough points and really making enough plays because, truth be told, when they played Georgia the last 3 years at Auburn with Bo as the quarterback, there was really only one game where it was fairly close. For the most part, Georgia's defense did a very good job of slowing him down. But now it's a situation where he's working with the defensive coordinator who was stopping him, might be able to kind of open up things and point out ways to attack Georgia. But yeah, again, to me, it's the Oregon defense, what Dan Lanning's going to throw at his former boss and the Bulldogs that really draws the most attention to me when it comes to this opening game.
Well, if a dog will bite, he'll do it when he's a pup. I like to say that. And Bo was 0-3 against Georgia. So if he's better than he was, I'll be surprised. I think when you look at Dan Lanning, the quarterback of Georgia's defense last year, the leader was Nakobe Dean. And I'm over in Atlanta a lot, Jordan. Daughter lives right there at exit 19, about a mile from the Braves stadium. And there's the big billboard, the one I'm talking about up there. He's doing an ad for a local law firm, I think. Number 17, he's in his Georgia jersey. But that was, to me, the heart and soul of the Georgia defense. And I think he's going to make a great NFL guy. But this Oregon game, it's always interesting when you have a coach who just leaves you as an assistant coordinator, obviously, goes from Georgia to Oregon. How much is he going to change? Because he knows and they know a lot about each other. So that right there is intriguing in game one. We're about out of time with in this segment here, Jordan. But I got to say, man, when you are breaking down Georgia, you must be at practices longer than other people because you definitely know a lot about what's going on. And I think Jimmy and I both, the takeaway from here is Kirby and that staff, he's got Will Muschamp in there with him. And those are two very smart defensive minds. And they're also two top-notch recruiters. And I don't think I think you're very dismissive when people say, you just, reload whatever. Well, you can't just reload 8 NFL draft picks off of a defense that won a national championship, but you can put guys in there and they're all different in their own rights, aren't they?
Absolutely. And that's the thing that's going to be interesting because I think there's going to be some growing pains. Really, the question is how significant. But they've got guys that have flashed. I think I've talked before about Jamon Dumas-Johnson. If there's one position I feel like right now, if you're a Georgia fan, where you shouldn't worry about at all as far as the people they're recruiting, the people they're bringing in, is inside linebacker. Glenn Schumann has done an excellent job of kind of just reloading. Losing, you lose a Roquan Smith, you bring in Amani Rice, you lose Amani Rice, you bring in Nakobe Dean. Obviously it's not going to be seamless, but they've got talent at that position. It's just a matter of seeing who rises to the occasion. And I think that's the situation. There's going to be some mistakes along the way. And, we might see some breakdowns during this Oregon game and maybe these first few weeks. But I think they're going to be in good position by the time we're really talking about sort of the backstretch of the season. I think this defense has a very good chance to be one of the best in the SEC.
Yeah, I'm not going to be surprised. I mean, that's just what you expect out of Kirby. Jordan, any surprises before you go on recruiting that Georgia? Obviously, they're one of the top classes in the country. They will be when all is said and done. Georgia, the state produces about 250 Division I players. Of the top 15 players, how many do you think Georgia's going to end up signing?
It's hard to say. I mean, Georgia's put themselves in a very good position. I think last I saw, they're in the top 5 as far as this 2023 class. The biggest thing that's intriguing to me is just what they do with the defensive line. They've got a guy, Xavier McLeod, who's going to commit later this week. It sounds like it's between South Carolina and Georgia. Georgia really made a big push. That would be a big win for them. Other guys they're interested in, like Jordan Hall, a guy that we've heard a lot of good things about. That's kind of the position group I'm very intrigued to see how this ends up. They've gotten some playmakers like Jamal Jarrett, who committed, I guess that was back in July. But continuing to bolster that defensive line, to me, is where I'm really paying attention to and see what kind of guys they can land.
Yeah, well, you got to have them if you want to win a national championship. You look at every team, their front sevens, 2 and 3 deep, but those big guys up front are the most coveted. Jordan, tell people how they can follow you, keep up with you. You put out lots of great content. Again, always love having you on this show and look forward to doing it again next week. I'm learning more about the dogs than I think I've ever learned.
Appreciate that. Well, yeah, dogs247.com. You can follow me on Twitter at Jordan Davis Hill and also our Twitter at dogs247. So right in the thick of fall camp, but no shortage of things to talk about and write about. So very exciting time and just getting ready for September 3rd, Rob.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, have a great rest of your week, and we'll talk to you then next Monday. Hopefully you can rejoin us, and I know there'll be a lot more to talk about, but thanks so much.
Absolutely.
All right. We're going to be joined here in just a minute by Anwar Richardson, orangebloods.com out in Austin. Jimmy, I think when Jordan really knows his Georgia football. He's got great insight, a lot of takeaways from there. And now we're going to join now with Anwar Richardson. Anwar, look, man, hey, Anwar Richardson, welcome to Sidelines. Appreciate you taking time out of your Monday morning to join us. And we just got through talking with Jordan Hill about Georgia as they're getting ready to kick off September 3rd in Atlanta at Mercedes-Benz Stadium against in Oregon. And Texas, man, more and more every day you can feel it as Texas gets closer along with Oklahoma to being a physical member of the SEC. I'm already noticing it, and Jimmy does too, in recruiting when you get Arch Manning to give you his pledge. And you know that kid is going to attract a lot of other star players. That Texas machine, I mean, they've got a brand. The Wall Street Journal values it like what, $1.108 billion. It's number 1 in the SEC. The Texas people, are they feeling as confident? 5-7 the first year under Steve Sarkisian, but now they're going out to recruits and saying, "Hey, we can offer you what Texas A&M can offer you," and that's a chance to play in the SEC and play your road games, up at Fayetteville and Jordan-Hare and Death Valley, Tiger Stadium, Bryant-Denny, the Swamp, Neyland Stadium. Is all that stuff starting to really sink in to the guys Texas is recruiting?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I saw something just a couple of weeks ago where they put together a package that they sent to a recruit, and it had SEC in there with the burnt orange in SEC lettering. So, yeah, they're wasting no time on selling that and promoting that. And, the toughest part for Texas has been when you are in the state of Texas, which actually has, fertile recruiting ground like a Florida might be, or, a lot of other states of California. But the problem is that it's hard to sell the Big 12. Right? You're selling Texas itself and come here, get a great diploma, great education, so on and so forth. But it's hard when A&M is selling SEC. And then it's hard when Alabama will come in and say, okay, we'll just take the top guys and leave from the state of Texas. You saw Clemson was able to do that a little bit, but just because of their brand name and not because they're, SEC related. And you saw other teams from the SEC being able to come in the state of Texas. what it's been able to do now is tell guys, hey, listen, you don't have to go to Bama to play in the SEC. You don't have to go to Georgia or Kentucky or any of these other places that are recruiting. You can just stay here. And now all of a sudden it becomes a little bit more appealing because you got to remember that you and I are old, right? So we remember Vince Young, right? We remember, those games and how good those teams were. But you got to think of these young kids. What do they remember? Right? It's been a long time since that national championship game where many of these kids may not have been born. When we're talking about Colt McCoy playing against Alabama, right?
Oh, yeah.
We're talking about how old were some of these recruits? 5? What do you remember from 5 years old? They remember current history, and current history has said the SEC is the place to be. The SEC is where you go if you want to go pro, even if they're not going to go pro. Every kid believes they're going to go pro. Every kid on when they sign says for the next 3 to 4 years, I'm going to take my talents to such and such. Every kid believes they're going to go pro. So even if they're going to a D2 or D3 school. So, but when you look at the success that the SEC has had as relates to the NFL, you can't compete against that when you're the Big 12. So there is a growing excitement. I think folks here at Texas would love to be in the conference sooner than later. It's like 2025 would be the absolute, golly, we got to wait this long. I think most people are optimistic and happen in 2024.
Well, and the thing that I know, and Jimmy and I and you, hell, I grew up, I've been to Austin several times. So was Jimmy, you lived there. Man, what an atmosphere. My friend Dave Cody was out there 36 years on TV as a sports anchor. Talked to Dave a lot. And, I've always have kept up with Texas. And, I remember just so many great Texas teams. And then since they lost to Alabama, it's been just they've lost 11 of the last 12 years, 4 games or more. And you're going, how the hell does that happen? Mm-hmm. We know money's there. We know facilities. We know talent-wise, 400 plus Division I players a year. But now you nailed it. The takeaway from what your opening comments are is they can now say SEC and in the burnt orange lettering in the Texas recruiting packages, they're selling that to kids. Folks, that now is putting Texas right there at the tip of the spear. We're going to take a quick break. Great stuff. Opening comments with Anwar Richardson of orangebloods.com. We're going to be right back. I know Jimmy's got some questions for you after this quick commercial break from our sponsors.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Brown. Talk sporty to me.
All right, man. I'm already getting hot thinking about the public grilling coming up September 11th at 11 a.m. on Fox Sports TV. Alabama visits Texas. Jimmy, great opening remarks from Anwar Richardson about that Texas brand. You lived out there. You know how passionate these people are. And I think now it's starting to sink in to recruits. Hey, man, everything is about to take a seismic shift in a positive way for Texas. Now, the competition is going to be more intense than it is in the Big 12, but Texas has been there before.
Well, it's going to improve their program tremendously just by playing better competition every week. I mean, I think it's hard to get better if you're playing against teams that you have a significant talent advantage against every week, because you can be making mistakes that prevent you from getting better, but yet you can get away with them just because you just have superior talent to your opponent. And in the SEC, that's not going to be the case. You're going to get burned for even the smallest mistakes, and that makes every team in the league better. But what I wanted to ask, I know, Anwar, you were talking about the hope from the Texas people that they might be able, along with Oklahoma, to enter the league, or would like to, by 2024. And in light of the fact that ESPN announced last week that they had pulled out of the Big Ten negotiations on their new contract, and that they've hinted that they actually might throw some of those resources into the Big 12 and the Pac-12, I was wondering if, you felt that this would be a huge boost to Texas recruiting if they could be able to get into the league a year earlier than expected, because we all know that 1 year in recruiting can make a huge difference. And if Texas could sell that message that they're coming into the league in 24 instead of 25, would be huge. And are you hearing, any speculation around Austin that a 2024 entry into the SEC might be possible?
Well, there's two questions to unpack and what you kind of outlined for there. I'll talk about the recruiting aspect, and then we'll go into what you talked about the 2024. From a recruiting aspect, in being able to sell the SEC, depending on recruiting rankings you look at, Texas is currently ranked number 2 in the Rivals rankings. I believe they're ranked number 3 in the country in 24/7. That's based off of 5 and 17. Okay, so there's a couple of things that are involved with that. One, of course, is the SEC, right? You can't downplay what that's about and how you can sell that. 2, Arch Manning, that absolutely helps. And 3, look, and let's just call it what it is. NIL is going to play a major factor in recruiting in Texas, and very familiar with here. They have a lot of money to what you started off by saying at the beginning about it, and the difference and the struggle for other programs are going to be, and this is no disrespect, but I'm just, to any team in the SEC, the state of Alabama is not going to produce that many more millionaires. Okay. The state of Mississippi is not going to produce that many more millionaires. The state of Georgia will probably be able to do that, but there's other places that are going to struggle to produce that more millionaires. When you're coming to Texas, there's a whole lot of millionaires. Okay, there's going to be, one of the Texas A&M jokes as relates to the Longhorns is they like to call them sips, because they like to sip their tea, and put the pinkies up, because it's kind of like they view it sometimes as the wine and cheese crowd, even though they're a passionate fan base. So you got to understand that. Now, going to the 2024 conversation that you're talking about, and ESPN, here's what I got to figure out, and this is what we've got to know. Look, these networks are all about the money, right? We can't deny that. If you're ESPN and Arch Manning enters the University of Texas at 2023, and there's a chance that he could be starting for Texas in 2024, do you want to miss out on that revenue? If you're ESPN, do you want to miss out on Arch Manning for going against Ole Miss? Do you want to miss out on Arch Manning go against Tennessee, right? Do you want to miss out on all that potential Arch madness that's going to occur? Because that's an SEC family, right? Arch Manning going against the University of Florida. He's going to try to do something that Peyton has never done, his uncle Peyton never done, which is beat the Gators, because he lost all 4 times, right? So that's the thing that you got to factor in. Now, maybe they're content to let it go 2025, but I think if you're ESPN and you have the ability to put Arch on, especially in prime time, but which again, it's a morning slot. But if you got a chance to put Arch, do you pass up on that? That to me is going to be something. Well, it may not be a big thing, right? Because there's a lot of other factors that are going to factor in it. But when we need to know that these networks want money, I think it's another factor that you can't ignore. So we're waiting to see, what happens. I think sometimes just the ribbon and bow, what you said, I think, they're waiting to see maybe if the Big 12 adds some more teams that from the Pac-12 that maybe they'll just say, okay, let's just part ways. Let's just figure this whole thing out. But they may be content to stay to the end, but it's just so many reasons for, especially if you're Big 12. Why do you even want Texas and Oklahoma around? Form your own brand and move on.
Well, and I keep saying this is like a failed marriage. The husband and wife, why do the kids need to see the parents pushing each other away and walking down the hall and not saying anything nice to each other? I mean, they know they're going, and Texas is going to use every resource they have to convince ESPN. And I don't think it'll take a lot, because you pointed it out. Arch Manning, the Mannings all go to SEC schools, and there are going to be a lot more Mannings in the future years. It's just amazing. They just keep putting out these kids like this that are exceptional. But that right there, it is about TV. It's about marketing. Anwar, about this Texas team coming up. Again, we go back first year under Steve Sarkisian, 5-7. He's got some of the guys that were with him at Alabama. They're familiar with each other. But what are you looking for out of this team? Everybody's talking about that second game of the year when Alabama comes to town. What are your expectations?
My expectations a little bit tempered, because you're making a huge jump, and again, look, them being ranked 18th in the country is fine. I don't know what coach decided to vote for them number one in the country. I don't know if that was sincere or if it was sarcasm, as far as that is concerned. But I think for what Steve Sarkisian is trying to do, I think it's got to be incremental. I think they can point to like a Baylor and say, well, Baylor had won 2 games the previous year, and then they jumped and, it ended up being conference champions. But the thing that kind of gets lost in that narrative when we talk about Baylor was that when Dave Aranda came in, that was during the COVID everything. He didn't have the offseason. Remember when football was shut down, practices, they couldn't practice his first year. And so basically they kind of go in blind. When he had a full offseason, they were a little bit better. Texas has talent. Like, I'm not going to deny that they have talent. Bijan Robinson is considered to be one of the top running backs in the country. Some say he is the number 1 running back in the country. They got a receiver by the name of Xavier Worthy. He's one of the top receivers in the country. He was a freshman last year, nearly had 1,000 yards, but should be able to hopefully eclipse that, this season. They've got offensive weapons. They've got a good tight end by the name of Jatavian Sanders, who's there. They've got Jordan Whittington, another solid, good receiver that's there. But then they also have a lot of question marks. They have an offensive line that struggled last season, and one of their starters looks like he's going to be done for the year with an ACL injury that's sustained over the weekend. They also have a receiver by the name of Isaiah Nayor, who transferred from Wyoming. You guys remember he was a Tennessee commit for about 2 minutes before he decided to go to Texas. He tears an ACL over the weekend. Looks like he's out for the entire year. Roshan Johnson, the backup running back to Bijan Robinson, he sustained an injury in the scrimmage on Saturday, and he looks like he could be out easily 4 to 5 weeks. So you got the injuries that are starting to mount up. You have a defense that returns a lot of the same guys from last season, but that defense was ranked 100th in the country. So that's why I say to myself, yes, Steve Sarkisian is a good coach, but he's also going to play probably Quinn Ewers, who's going to be a young quarterback that's going to have to learn trial by fire through an offensive line that may or may not be good when it's all said and done. So that's why, for me, I think this is, another part of the building year for Steve Sarkisian in Texas. I'm not expecting huge leaps and huge bounds. I think for me, if they can make some, a little bit of progress and start getting that momentum going for the SEC, so where they can go and be competitive. They weren't competitive against Arkansas last year. And then, we know Alabama's in week 2. So for me, if you're asking me if they can get between that 7 or 8 win range, I would consider that an accomplishment. Now, that's a failure at Texas, and Texas fans will not like that at all. Sure. But for me, just being realistic, with all the obstacles that they're facing, I think if they get that 7-8 win range, I would consider that probably a win for them.
Yeah, and the takeaway from what you just said is that there's opportunities for recruits to come in at probably every position, especially on the offensive line. And, and that right there really helps a lot. Jimmy, we got a few more minutes with Anwar Richardson. I know you got some questions.
Well, considering what you foresee for the 2022 season, I wanted to know what big money guys at Texas feel about the progress of the program after a season going into 2022. And your forecast seems to be, very, very tempered, very realistic. But we all know fan bases often aren't realistic, and a lot of that fan base last year went off the deep end, especially after that Arkansas game, and they never really calmed down. But how are the power brokers, the decision makers, how are they handling this transition up to this point? And what do you think they would consider significant progress this season? Because sometimes, you have to realize that in a situation like Texas is dealing with right now, a big goal is to make just significant progress in all areas of your team from the opening game by the time you get to the end of the season, because you can tell well-coached teams. Those are the teams that are significantly better at the end of the season after they've had a chance to work together in game situations for 3 months.
So it's good, very good question, by the way. As it relates to the money person, it's funny you say that. I was talking to a money person over the weekend who is a part of one of the collectives, and he told me that particular, just one collective has $25 million ready to go for NIL. Okay, that's just one. When I talk about Texas and the money, that's just one. There's several that are similar to that as far as Texas goes. They are. I think being patient at this moment because they like Sarkisian. They believe in Sarkisian. They believe, in what he can be and in the success that, he had as an assistant at Alabama. I don't think anybody is willing to, hit the panic button yet. I think that's going to be a good question for after the season. We've got to make sure that this team is competitive in games, that it doesn't look like a dumpster fire or anything to that effect. So I think as long as they're competitive, as long as they can see the progress, I think they're going to be okay with Steve Sarkisian. You got to remember, they gave Tom Herman 4 years, right? So, and the hell, they're still paying Tom Herman. I believe he's got another, this year, and I think he's got another one there. I mean, that's probably going to be 13, 14 million for that guy just to sit around and call games on CBS regional games and stuff. So not a bad gig if you could get it.
Yeah, I'll take it.
Yeah, you can fire me today for 14 million. I can guarantee you.
Jimmy and I both.
But it'll take, so I don't think they want to bleed the money. I think they believe that, these guys understand because they were at Bama what it takes for it to occur to be successful in the SEC, the kind of bodies that you need. So they're recruiting bigger offensive linemen than they did before because they didn't have that kind of size on the offensive line. Same thing goes for the defensive side, bigger athletic kind of guys on the defensive side of the ball. They're really kind of emphasizing trying to win in the trenches. And so because Steve Sarkisian is familiar with the SEC, I believe they're going to try to give him as many opportunities as possible. And because he is recruiting at a high level, he did get a Quinn Ewers in here, former 5-star quarterback. He's got Arch Manning coming in, right? This can't be denied. And you got the number 2 recruiting class in the country. There's no hot seat to be had. They want to see results, obviously, but the way he's recruiting, it gives them optimism for the future. Steve Sarkisian's got to make sure the present, is at least competitive enough to keep them happy.
Well, the SEC's got that great slogan. It just means more. Mm-hmm. Well, for years, everybody, on this side of the Mississippi River kept saying Texas and Oklahoma are just natural for the SEC. So it just means more. This just makes sense. That's just what it is. Just like when they brought in A&M with all the traditions and the dog and, the Corps cadets. And there's something, I've spent a lot of time over the years in Texas. I got a lot of friends that live down there. Dave Cody, 36 years out there, just said it's like Disney World. But now again, you cannot put enough of a premium on Texas being able to say, not that A&M can't say it, but now the University of Texas can say it. It's a powerful statement, man. And they'll still go out of state, but they can get most everything they need in state. Again, offensive linemen are the hardest to find. But Anwar, man, really love this segment with you. We got to get you back on here again very soon. You really know Texas, and you've got a grasp on the national picture. We got about a minute left. Tell people how they can follow you and keep up with all the great content you put out. And again, thanks a million for being on here with us.
I'd say two things. It's follow me on Twitter at Anwar Richardson, ANWAR Richardson, pretty simplistic. Secondly, for all your listeners, when you start thinking about road trips in the future, Austin is going to not a bad place to go. This is going to be it's a city that will be a destination city for you. You'll circle on the map, bring the family up on a Thursday. You'll be able to guys enjoy the city. Everyone's liked it here. Everyone's moving here. Take the family out on the lake. Go to see all the amazing, get the good food here. A lot of times you go to small towns, you got to make the best of it. The road trip, it benefits Texas, Texas to be the SEC, but for the SEC to have that road trip is not a bad thing.
No, I don't. I've been to Austin and 6th Street, and everybody's going to want to go to Franklin Barbecue. And I mean, it's kind of it's a win-win deal, but it's going to be a lot of fun. But Anwar, look, this has been great, and we're getting that much closer to the season, and you can just feel it. And then next week, when I want to talk about like guys like Jaden Blue and different players that have got to step up. You've already got injuries. If you can stay healthy, you got a chance in every game. Hey, everybody, great show. I want to thank all of our guests, all of our listeners, live from Red River Ford Toyota in Wynn, Arkansas. Most often we see the face of Christ in the least among us. Go out and help somebody with the expectation of getting nothing in return, folks. We live in the greatest country in the world. Remember, act like it. Be proud and never shrink to make other people around you feel less insecure. Rise up, be a light of hope, and people will follow you. We'll be back tomorrow.